Setting it up. Hello. Hi, everyone. And welcome to our Facebook Live. We are now streaming on Facebook, apparently. Let's see. Hi, everyone. I am Julie Flygar. I'm President and CEO at Project Sleep. And Happy New Year. This is the first time I'm broadcasting since the new year. So I hope everyone had a very happy holidays with your friends and your family and a very fun, festive New Year's, and you're feeling all inspired for the new year and the new decade. So I'm so excited tonight. I hope that you guys are able to find this broadcast and join us here, because tonight we have a very special presenter. Sheila will be presenting tonight her Rising Voices of Narcolepsy presentation. But before we get started with Sheila's presentation, and as you guys are finding us, I'm going to go ahead and just give a little bit of updates about Project Sleep really quickly, and then we'll bring in the main act, Sheila. So let's see. What did I want to share with you today? Oh, well, first of all, I just wanted to remind you guys, this is going to be a new monthly series that we're doing, these Rising Voices of Narcolepsy sharing sessions. So we train at Project Sleep. This is now, we've trained for 3 years, Rising Voices of Narcolepsy speakers and writers on sharing their story. And so we have presenters who are going out and giving these great speeches in schools and in medical schools, high schools, all over the country and even around the world. But now we want to make sure that you guys are able to see these presentations as well. So that's why we're doing this sharing series. And so it's going to be monthly. And so this is our January session featuring Sheila. And so now other news from Project Sleep. I think you might have seen a few days ago, we launched the 7th year of the Jack and Julie Narcolepsy Scholarship Program. So this is just really exciting, because it has now been 7 years. We've given out 68 scholarships to students with narcolepsy or idiopathic hypersomnia in the last 6 years. And so this is our 7th year, and we're planning to give out 15 scholarships, 10 to students with narcolepsy and 5 to students with idiopathic hypersomnia. And that is thanks to a wonderful partnership with the Hypersomnia Foundation. They contribute the funds so that we can do the scholarships for students with IH, or idiopathic hypersomnia. So we can't wait. The applications are due April 1st. So the application is now available on our website, and it's for high school seniors that are going to be starting their first year of college next year to be applying, and they have until April 1st to get their applications in. In other news, I had mentioned that we are going to be having an advocacy day, our next advocacy day, where we go to Capitol Hill and advocate for sleep research and sleep awareness efforts on a national, federal level. We are going to do our next one in February, and I just recently got the date, so I wanted to share with you guys that we'll next be doing that on February 10th. So Project Sleep will go with the Sleep Research Society, and we'll be on Capitol Hill. We hope to bring a few patient advocates with us. This is what we've, Project Sleep feels so passionately about, bringing the voices of people that are living with sleeping disorders to that effort. And so we'll likely bring a few patient advocates from a few key states that are important for our efforts, as far as senators or members of the House of Representatives that serve on certain committees. So that's how we somewhat are able to right now, with limited opportunities to bring people to Washington, D.C. That's how we right now prioritize those spots. But we're really excited. So I'm sure you'll see more about that in February. And just as far as the Rising Voices of Narcolepsy program goes, this, if you are inspired tonight by hearing Sheila's presentation, which I know you will be, we will be doing our 4th year of the Rising Voices of Narcolepsy program trainings this summer. So the trainings take place over about a month for either the writing or the speaking program. And you actually go through, you get a workbook in the mail. So I brought this along to show everyone. You get this really cool workbook, and it takes you through sharing, going through your story and figuring out the key points that we want to bring into your presentation. And so you work directly with Project Sleep in developing your presentation or your essay. And then at the end of the program, you either have, your final presentation or a final essay to get published. And so for 2020, again, the sessions will take place this summer, but the application for the program will be out in mid-February. So you would apply in mid-February to participate. And then if you are selected to participate, the sessions take place over the summer. And it is a big commitment. These volunteers are incredible people like Sheila and so many others. We've had about over 60 people graduate the program so far in the first 3 years. And so they dedicate a lot of time and energy and limited spoons to this effort. And I'm just so grateful for each of them. And I'm so super excited for you to hear Sheila tonight. So we'll go ahead and get started with Sheila's portion. I do want to remind everyone of two things before we get started with Sheila. The first is that it's important to remind everyone that we're providing information for education and awareness purposes. So even though there is, we're streaming this on Facebook and it's public and it's live, and there are comments section for you to write in, and we hope that you'll be able to write in some comments there as we go through Sheila's presentation. It's important to know that this is not a substitute for medical information. We can't give out medical information. It's important that if you have medical questions that you ask your doctor. And always, 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 Project Sleep is huge on making sure that people get access to sleep clinicians. Again, just remember that this is public, and comments that are shared there are public, and it's probably not the best place to be sharing your own private information about your own health, but we're doing this for education and awareness purposes. And then lastly, Sheila's going to present, and we'll have a few minutes after she presents to answer just a few questions. So, as she's wrapping up her presentation and you think of a question or two that, you want to ask her about her journey, go ahead and type that into the Facebook comments, and we will be able to just, select a few of those to have Sheila answer live. And so with that, I am going to go ahead and let's see, get Sheila on here. Sheila, you want to unmute yourself and
hi, Julie.
Hi, Sheila. Let's see.
Hi, you can hear me?
I can hear you perfect. And if you want to go ahead and share your slides, and then once
hello?
You're there.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. As Julie said, I have actually muted my own picture, so I can't see myself, which is good. I can only see my slides. So as Julie said, I'm a Rising Voices of Narcolepsy speaker, and I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada, where we are just having a snowstorm that's on the end.
Can you go ahead and share your slides? We're not seeing them.
You're not seeing the slides? Oh, sorry.
You have to go ahead and press the share button.
Yeah, the share button. Got it.
All right. I'm going to read your bio for everyone while you do that, okay?
Okay, yeah.
Right. Sheila Coutts is a retired pediatric nurse with an interest in health education and wildlife rehabilitation, living in Nova Scotia, Canada. She was diagnosed with narcolepsy after 25 years of symptoms. And as a trained speaker with the Rising Voices of Narcolepsy program, she is sharing her story to educate others and help bring sleep disorders to the mainstream of society and medicine. And that looks great. We just go ahead and put that in. Perfect.
Okay. Is that better?
Perfect. Take it away, Sheila.
Okay. Okay, good. Thanks, Julie. So I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada, and this is my story. And I'd like to thank Julie and Project Sleep for this opportunity. It is amazing and very empowering to be able to share your story like this. So before narcolepsy, before my diagnosis, and I guess I continue to be a very busy person, I was a pediatric nurse for 35 years, and I have two children who are grown, and I retired from nursing about 2 years ago. I can remember back as early as my teens complaining that I was tired. And when I would say I was tired, people would always say that's normal. We're all tired. And that included when I was having my children later on. So I just accepted that that was normal, that people were tired. And I think it's worth noting that I come from a family of nappers. So my symptoms began with a bang literally at the age of 21. Something quite suddenly seemed to have changed for me. And I was at work and I was sitting down at the nursing station with a coworker, and I was feeding an infant. And all of a sudden I had this really heavy feeling in my head, just this really unusual feeling in my head. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that it wasn't normal and that something was going on. So I quickly handed the baby over to her. And as I did, my whole upper body became limp. I was sitting on a chair and I fell off the chair. I kind of, went head first, and the rest of my body, straggled along, and I ended up on the floor. I remember thinking, this is really strange. Why am I on the floor? And it didn't last. After about a minute or two, I got up and was shaken, but okay, and was back to work the next day. Shortly after this, maybe in the next days and weeks, I started noticing some other things, like my brain felt really foggy. I was having trouble concentrating. I would have deja vu. So I would have these periods in the day where I would feel like I was just doing the same thing over and over again. And I didn't think much about that. I didn't even think it was related to the other strange experiences I was having, but certainly something was going on, and it was certainly not much fun. The poor concentration, I would start to nap, and this was really so that I could recharge. And I didn't really consider it being tired. I just felt like, oh, I'm in a busy profession and this is what we do, to kind of recharge. So I do have a couple notes here for myself, only because my story is a little bit long. It was 25 years before I was diagnosed, and I just want to make sure that it's 9 o'clock here and I am a little bit tired. So I want to make sure I don't miss any important parts. The graphic here that says Nope is actually a card that I found at the market, and the artist is Gemma Corral. And I just think it's funny because when I'm tired, there's nothing else I can do. It also related to me falling on the ground, which I started to do more and more often, first starting at the age of 21. So as I said, my road to diagnosis was long. At the age of 23, I was diagnosed with seizures, and I'd had many more episodes like this. And one that was really quite notable that I remember was a time when I was actually in charge on our floor, and I was having a discussion with another nurse on another unit. And we were talking on the phone. She was on her unit, I was on mine. And it became a little bit heated, and I became angry. And I distinctly remember this feeling of anger kind of rising, this intense anger. And shortly after this, I was in the middle of a phone call, and shortly after this, I just crashed to the floor. I remember the phone hitting the floor with a loud bang, and I'm laying on the floor. I have no idea why I'm there, how I got there. I just know that I collapsed. This is in a busy nursing unit with a lot of things going on, certainly things more important than, what I'm doing down on the floor. But it was certainly very peculiar, and it didn't last long. I was down on the floor for a minute or two. I got back up. I had my full strength back, and certainly didn't know why this happened. So between the age of 20 and 45, I had several diagnoses, and I was treated for epilepsy from 23 to 45, but it was never really a clear picture, and there were many other things that would happen or symptoms I would have, and I would get another diagnosis. when I would get these diagnoses, it wasn't always something that would last. It might be something that I needed treatment with for 3 years, 5 years, and then it was kind of a non-entity, or it didn't progress into anything else. And at age 45, I ended up seeing a new neurologist. And this was actually quite eventful for me, and quite, this was really the turning point for me. I had had one of my collapsing or spells, and I ended up in the emergency room. And as anybody who's been to the emergency room or been in hospital many times can tell you, I had to tell my story again and again and again. And this particular time, I was speaking to a resident, and he asked me to tell my story from the beginning. And it was very long, it was very convoluted. And I said to him that I was describing something that happened when I was 19. And he said to me, well, your chart says that this happened when you were 21. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm 45 now. How am I supposed to remember what happened when I was 19 versus 21? So I really felt like he didn't believe me, or he was questioning me. And I really definitely felt misunderstood. And the good thing that came out of this, although I felt frustrated, was I did get a consult to another neurologist, and this was certainly something positive that came out of it. So when I finally saw the neurologist, he told me that he felt that my story was a little bit peculiar. I was on my 4th anti-seizure medication, and he said to me, I don't feel like increasing your medication again or changing it, because there's something about you. I can't put my finger on it, but I feel like I need to do some more investigation. So he admitted me to the QE2 Health Sciences Center for a video EEG. And I figured I wouldn't see him because specialists are very busy. I thought, well, a letter will be sent with the results to my doctor, and I will get the results that way. So I was really quite surprised the next morning when he came into my hospital room. And of course, I'm all wired up. I've got these lovely EEG electrodes on and the glue and all that stuff. And he comes into my room, and he didn't say anything. And he walks over to my bed, and he has a very strange expression. And he grabs a chair, and he sits down in front of me, and he says, Sheila, has anybody ever asked you about sleep? And I was like, I don't know. I don't think so. And he said, well, I'm going to ask you about your sleep. How do you sleep? And I said, I sleep fine. And he said, well, I'm going to ask you a few more questions about sleep. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. So he said, do you ever nap? And when he said that, I actually had goosebumps. And I said, yes, I nap every day. And he said, what do you mean every day? And I said, well, I have some sort of little nap or rest every day. And he said, Sheila, I don't think you have seizures. I really think that you have a sleep disorder. So I was confused at this point. And he said, I was watching your EEG, and I was watching you with your friend last night who came to visit, and you guys were playing cards. And the whole time you were playing cards and I'm watching your brainwaves, he said you were having microsleep. And I looked at him and I said, microsleep, what is that? He said, it's essentially you are having little spells of sleeping all the time, like quite frequently. I'd never heard of microsleep, so I was a little bit put off and didn't know what to make of it. He said, essentially, I think that you don't have seizures. What you have is a sleep disorder. I think you have narcolepsy. And I remember looking at him and being totally dumbfounded. I knew very little about narcolepsy, basically only what I'd seen in the media or on TV. And I was like, but I'm thinking I'm not falling asleep all the time. That's all I knew. So he told me he was going to take me off of my seizure meds. And I was very concerned with that. And he said, don't worry, we'll look after you. but I'm taking you off your seizure medication and I'm getting you into the sleep lab as soon as I can. So 3 weeks later, I was at the sleep lab and I had a sleep study and I met my now sleep physician and I was diagnosed with narcolepsy. So many of you watching this, I'm sure if you're watching this, you know more than I knew about narcolepsy when I was diagnosed, but it is a chronic neurological disorder of the sleep-wake cycle, and it affects 1 in 2,000 people. And essentially, this is about 200,000 Americans or 3 million people worldwide. And I was really surprised at that statistic, that there were so many people. There are 5 main symptoms of narcolepsy. Everybody is a little bit different. And I actually had all 5 of them at the time of my diagnosis. So the first one is excessive daytime sleepiness. And this is very striking sleepiness. This is somewhat sudden, striking, extremely tired feeling. And it can be compared to somebody without narcolepsy being awake for 48 to 72 hours. And it comes through the day, periodically. And this is what somebody with narcolepsy deals with on a regular basis. Cataplexy is a very striking, sudden weakness in your muscles. It can be one or more muscle. It can be all of your muscles, and it can actually make you fall down, as happened with me. So when I look back on my stories, the story of falling off the chair when I was feeding the baby, and thankfully gave the baby to my friend first, and when I was having the argument with somebody and fell to the ground, those were actually cataplexy spells. So that was weakness. And cataplexy is usually associated with a strong emotion. When I met my sleep doctor and we started going back over many, many years and looking at when I had my spells or my events, like the one I had when I was arguing with somebody on the phone, many of them were with strong emotions. Excessive daytime sleepiness is a little tricky for me because my sleepiness does not look like you think of when you think of sleepy. So I never told people that I was having issues with sleep. For me, it presented, like I was explaining, with a brain fog, difficulty concentrating, having frequent deja vus, issues with my memory, and just generally feeling foggy. So that was something certainly that I learned about myself along the way. Hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations are hallucinations that happen when you're falling asleep or you're waking up. And they tend to happen, or they can happen, I should say, with sleep paralysis. I did not have them together, but I had many hallucinations over the years. Hallucinations can be tactile, so something that you feel, it can be something that you hear, or it can be something that you see. Mine, for the most part, were auditory or things that I heard. And my son may be watching this and he will laugh, but I used to have the hallucination that my son was coming in late all the time, and I would hear the back door banging, and I would hear him running up the stairs and running down the stairs all hours of the night. So one night at about 3 a.m, I had checked several times and he was in his bed, and this one night at 3, I was convinced at 3 a.m. that somebody had come in our house and slammed the door. So I come downstairs, I go to the back door, and I'm standing there by the door, and I look at the dog. This is a dog who barks when anybody comes near our house, never mind knocking at the door. I looked at the dog and I said, "You didn't hear that, did you?" And of course he didn't, because it was a hallucination. It actually wasn't there. So I went back to bed and I stopped getting up for them. I haven't had those for years, thankfully. Sleep paralysis is when you're either drifting off to sleep or you're waking up and in the morning and you can't move. So you're awake, you're aware of your surroundings, but your body is unable to move for several seconds or several minutes. I had this probably 4 or 5 times in the couple of years before my diagnosis, but I haven't had it since. Disrupted nighttime sleep is something that I'm really surprised that I'm dealing with now, but my sleep doctor thankfully warned me that this may be the issue. She had said that people with narcolepsy have issues with their sleep being disrupted. And like in the beginning of the presentation, or the previous slide, it's a disruption of our sleep cycle. So it's the timing of our sleep that's an issue. And I certainly have that now. I have trouble staying asleep. And I'm sure that as I get older, that's not going to get better because our sleep does change. So there are two types of narcolepsy. There's narcolepsy with cataplexy, which is the type that I have, and narcolepsy without cataplexy. Narcolepsy with cataplexy is believed to be caused by a lack of hypocretin or orexin. And this is a neurotransmitter. So it's a chemical in our brain. And what it does is it keeps us alert, and it also regulates our sleep so that we have a normal wake sleep cycle and we can sleep at night. And people with narcolepsy without cataplexy, they don't have the same issue with hypocretin, and it's not as clear what causes their symptoms. So in order to be diagnosed, I had to have a sleep study, and this involves 24 hours at the sleep clinic under the management of, management of a sleep specialist. And the first part of it is the overnight part, and it's a polysomnogram. And that involves them monitoring your EEG or your brain waves, your heart rhythm, and a few other things overnight. The daytime part is called a multiple sleep latency test. And this involves having naps during the day. And what they're doing is they're trying to see if do you sleep in your naps, but also more importantly, do you go into REM sleep as you're falling asleep or in a brief nap? And people with narcolepsy will go into REM or rapid eye movement very quickly. People without narcolepsy will not. So my life with narcolepsy is very good. I have no complaints. It's definitely brighter with the diagnosis. It's much better to know what you're dealing with. I had many, many years where I would have so many different specialist appointments and tests, and I was always struggling to kind of keep balance. But now that I know what I have, my symptoms are much more clear to me, and I understand what's going on. I'm a volunteer with Hope for Wildlife, and some people watching this may know that we're a TV show as well, but we're an animal rescue site, and our TV show is in over 100 countries. So the picture on the right, the large picture, is me with Ariel. And Ariel is a barred owl. And Ariel came to us because she was missing a wing. She was found in someone's backyard and she couldn't fly. And she's very dear to me. Some people might know I actually named my Instagram handle after her, Napping Night Owl. So what we do is we go in schools and we do education around wildlife. And the other thing that I do now that I'm retired, I retired from nursing 2 years ago, I'm an Norwex consultant. And I think that this ties in really well with the environmental part of the wildlife care. And when I look at what's happening in Australia right now, and everybody is certainly worried about the wildlife there and the environment. Norwex is a company that looks at environmentally friendly products and reducing the amount of chemicals that we have in our home. And the pictures below, of course, are my family, my husband, Stephen, who's very supportive. I'm very lucky that way. And my kids are also there in the picture below. So the treatment for narcolepsy is, it's different for everybody. It's not one shoe fits all or one size fits all. Wake promoting drugs or stimulants to combat the daytime sleepiness are very, very important. And nighttime medications, if you understand kind of the underlying cause of narcolepsy, nighttime medications are important to make sure that we sleep all night. And this will help with some of those daytime issues such as sleepiness and cataplexy. Antidepressants for cataplexy can work very well for some people. That's certainly what I've been using, and thankfully it is still working. And schedule daytime naps. So Naps, when we think of naps, we think of something as a luxury, or I certainly used to, as something that you do because you just want to relax. For people with narcolepsy, quite often a nap is a necessity. And for me, if I want to have a productive day or if I have things planned, I have to schedule my nap. And I can't really go through more than 5 or 6 hours without having a nap. So I do something for 5 or 6 hours. I plan that nap. It may be only 15, 20 minutes, but it is very, very helpful. And social support, when I was first diagnosed, I got some information, of course, from my sleep doctor. And then I started doing my own homework and trying to find, are there other people out there? And quickly I knew there was. And looking at support systems for myself. Being a nurse, I knew from talking to other people that reaching out to people who were going through something similar could be immensely helpful. So I quickly ran into the Narcolepsy Network and Project Sleep. And it was actually the hashtag narcolepsy not alone that grabbed me first about Project Sleep. And then I later on went into looking into the Rising Voices of Narcolepsy program. The Narcolepsy Network has a conference every year, and the bottom picture is actually a picture of myself, Julie, and Katie this year in Albuquerque. And it was a lot of fun. And it's 3 days packed full of education and some fellowship as well. There is a support group list, I believe, with the Narcolepsy Network. And in Halifax, there's a support group that you can link up with by contacting the sleep clinic. My napping is not always, sometimes it can be funny. It can be in funny places. And usually it's something only I know, but occasionally I'll get into a situation that can be a little bit funny. I do share my narcolepsy with other people, and I do this because it makes life simpler. Many ambulance drives, I've had too many times where I've had to explain to people when I'm in the middle of, not feeling my best. So if people know ahead of time, I just find it simpler. So lifestyle adjustments for me include naps, but they need to be scheduled and I need to pay attention. So the bottom picture is when I was working really hard at Hope for Wildlife, and we were actually shoveling mulch to get ready for a new beaver. So there was an injured beaver coming in, and this was a brand new enclosure. And my friends went to get more mulch, and I'm looking at this mulch, and I was getting very tired. I was practically staggering. And I remember looking at the mulch thinking, oh my goodness, like I just need a nap. I just need to lay down here. I have to lay down. And they came back and I was asleep in the mulch, and it was very refreshing. And I'm very grateful that my naps are refreshing. But they took a picture, they sent it to Hope, and everybody had a laugh. So to have people laugh who understand and to have it be part of, your coping, humor can be very helpful. The top picture is actually a picture I took. I had just woken up from a nap and I was actually in the back of my car, and I put this hashtag on. I took a quick picture before I was fully awake. And it says, there are days when my eyes burn and I feel like every cell is on fire, craving sleep, but it won't come. And sometimes that happens at night. I finally nap and I am renewed. And a few hours later, I'm back to where I started. So for me, this sleepiness or this feeling of not being able to function properly goes in cycles of about 5 or 6 hours. So I feel amazing. And then 5 or 6 hours, I start to wind down again. So it is something that you definitely have to plan your life around and have adjustments. And my family could tell you a few stories, I'm sure. So I think that one thing that I've learned through this experience is that even if you don't understand your symptoms, it's really important that you share them. There were times that things were happening to me that perhaps I didn't have the words to describe, or I thought that people would think I was stupid or I was crazy or what is wrong with her, because my story didn't always make sense. And I remember getting looks from healthcare professionals like, what? And I think that if you're feeling this, but you know that this is your truth and this is what actually happened, You need to take a deep breath, step back, and just tell your story again. And for me, I was really determined that I would just keep telling my story until eventually it made sense to somebody and I would get some answers. And this is what this little graphic here is: be quietly, politely, and relentlessly fierce in your determination. And hopefully that you'll get some answers. Raising awareness is important because it takes about 8 to 15 years on average for people to get diagnosis of narcolepsy. So that's from the beginning of symptoms to when they're diagnosed. For me, it was 25 years, and that's me going back to when I was 21. But if I go back a little further, there were definitely times in high school where I think that things were starting to happen. I would want to think that I could nap on the way home, like I would have heavy legs and things like this. And when I look back, I think I was probably having some symptoms back then. Under 50% of people with narcolepsy are currently diagnosed, and that is a staggering amount, I think. Narcolepsy can occur in children, and it frequently happens or begins in teens. So I think that it is a pediatric issue, and I think that the pediatric community needs to be aware of the fact that this is a pediatric concern as well. So the future, I think, is bright. Organizations like Project Sleep, the Narcolepsy Network, and so many more I can think of are doing amazing jobs getting out there and telling people about narcolepsy and making people more aware of sleep disorders, and not just from an awareness point of view, but also from a policy point of view, as can be seen if you're following Project Sleep and some of these organizations who actually go to Capitol Hill and have their voice heard. The top picture is actually me at my old job site. I'm in our conference room, and this is educators from the IWK Health Center, and they're from all over the hospital, the women's site and the children's site. And I gave them my presentation on the Rising Voices of Narcolepsy, or my narcolepsy story. The bottom picture on the right is a bunch of teenagers from high school in Eastern Passage, and this was about a month ago. And these kids were awesome. I was really thrilled that they were interested in sleep. They had questions about sleep. And I made a joke at the beginning that if they fell asleep, I wouldn't hold it against them. And you know what? They were awesome. And they jumped for this picture. They had no problems at all taking a picture with me. And they do know that it's going to be on social media. So I'm hoping that I can do some more presentations around schools and hopefully some more hospitals as well. That is my story. And if you have any questions for me, you can obviously go through Project Sleep or Julie, but there is an email that is narcolepsyhalifax@gmail.com or at Gmail, and you can reach me there. And thanks very much for listening.
Yay! Great job, Sheila. I'm gonna go ahead. Gonna go ahead and end the share of slides. Let's see. I don't know if they can see you or they can see me, but we'll go ahead and try to collect some questions if people have any questions for Sheila about her story. And I think I'll go ahead and ask you your first question.
Oh no.
Well, wait, first of all, I just want to say thank you, Sheila, for sharing your story. You had me welling up in tears, and I've heard you before, but there's just still something every time about hearing the process. And I think when you shared about that if you don't quite understand your story, but it's still important to tell someone, like that is just so important. So I just love that that's one of your key messages, and you had me like getting teary. So
wow.
So just thank you again. And guys, write in questions. We're going to try to get a few over if we can, but I'm going to start. Sheila, so
yes, Julie.
You were a pediatric nurse.
Yeah.
And I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, but were you in neurology as well?
I was, and I had actually had several of these cataplexy attacks in front of neurologists. And yeah, it's mind-boggling. They actually, once they found my diagnosis, were extremely supportive. but it's ironic that I had most of them at work. And that was because I couldn't rest at work. I was constantly, moving and on the go, and I would just hit the ground.
And so, it just is so amazing to think that neurologists are out there and seeing the symptoms and not even recognizing that that could
Yeah.
be.
And to be fair, I keep thinking about how relatively new the sleep science is. And my symptoms started in 1983. That first event was 1983 or 84. And even compared to when I retired, I don't think sleep was on the radar, not in the same way it is now. So I kind of cut them slack for that and hope that things will catch up.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's totally true, because I always try to remind people, I think they discovered REM sleep like in 1960 something.
Yeah.
Like before that, we didn't even know that REM sleep existed. And just to think that how much progress we're making now and better understanding sleep. And so, yeah, I mean, all tides are rising. So we just have to hope.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm not naming anyone in particular, but I just think it's so fascinating to think of even it just always reminds me of the importance of this work and like the work that you're doing by raising awareness and going back to your own group and sharing your story there, because there's so many people to be educated. So and from your presentation so far, I believe you did have one as well where you went into a health fair. It was like a health day.
Yeah, it was a health day. It was actually at the local, not the local, we have many. It was at one of the elementary schools, and it was for parents. And there was different things on safety and health. And I got myself in there. I'm like, how about sleep? So it was great. I got to talk to a lot of parents about sleep. And thanks to you, I took a suitcase full of things home from the conference. So I had a lot of brochures and got to answer questions about sleep from parents of elementary school students.
Wow. Now I'm thinking of a different one. I'm thinking of one where there was a mental health day and the children in school went around and had different presentations on different topics.
Yeah. So that was last year, and that was a junior high in Fairview, which is not too far from here. And I think it was Fairview. Anyway, a local junior high, and they got to pick what they went to. So it was a full day of presentations. And at the end of the day, I was talking to the girl from the Epilepsy Association, and I said, how did your presentations go? Like how were things? She said, I had 4 kids come, and I was blown away because I had about 20 at each of mine. So the kids actually signed up to talk about sleep or to hear about sleep. And, I always thought, well, epilepsy, that must be something interesting. People would think, oh, seizures, that's so cool. No, they all came to talk about sleep. And her and I had a great discussion, actually. And I need to get back to her because she actually asked if I would do something, just a little talk on sleep for them.
Wow.
Yeah, it was interesting.
I just think that's so cool. There's so many different, hopefully more avenues to get the story. And I think it's really great that you always kind of emphasize sleep in general because people think that's, more important in their lives. But of course, still that you're telling your own story, and this through the storytelling is what really gets people to understand. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. All right. All right. We have a question.
Okay.
It's wonderful that your friends and coworkers are so accepting and that you're comfortable sharing. Did you ever find it difficult to share your story?
Yeah. So I remember one of the first times I told a manager about my narcolepsy. She told me that it was my story and I need to keep it to myself. And she said it in a way that I almost felt like she was uncomfortable talking about it, but I didn't want to have a cataplexy. And this was further on when I was fairly well controlled, but occasionally having little breakthroughs. And she said, no, you don't need to tell you shouldn't be telling your coworkers. And for me, it wasn't just for support. I did not want the disruption in my work life. If I had a little cataplexy attack, I didn't want somebody calling an ambulance for me to go over and wait 7 hours and then say, see ya, you have narcolepsy, like go home, we know what you have. And that happened to me many, many times. So as I started telling people, it got easier and easier and easier. And I did enough education that I could explain things easier too, right? Like I made sure I understood what I was, explaining so that people wouldn't be worried.
That's very good. I think that my journey was similar, just like starting slowly. And then, yeah, just knowing the naysayers or those negative voices are not everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we have any other questions from people watching on Facebook. Thank you guys again. We're like, this is all new. So Sheila was very brave to be our first person participating in this. And we're trying to, get all the technology in place and make sure that we could answer some questions, but also be doing the broadcast at the same time. So I want to thank Anna for helping us out with that as well, behind the scenes to get this all together. And just thank you again, Sheila.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Julie.
Yeah, you're an amazing speaker and an amazing person and an amazing advocate for this, but also healthcare products that are environmentally safe and wildlife. So those owls and even the beavers. So you're just saving everything. Well, with that, I think we'll go ahead and, we have one more question. How do you find an audience for your story?
How do I find an audience?
Mm-hmm.
So the last couple of times I'm vocal. So I'm a bit of an extrovert and I'm out there telling people, right? Because I just feel like people need to know, right? And some of it might come from a little bit of embarrassment because, I worked in neuro for many years and I went to so many conferences on the brain and I didn't know. So if I didn't know about sleep disorders, then there's lots of people who don't. So I started reaching out to a few teachers and then that I knew, and then it spread. So they would say, oh, you're having this. Oh, I know this person who does this, these sleep talks, and would it fit in with your curriculum? I haven't gone the route of like going to the school board or going anything really big yet. Maybe partly because I'm afraid to, but it's just been word of mouth so far.
Yeah, and it's actually a good question for me to point out too. I think people might think that with the Rising Voices that once you have the presentation, then you'll just be able to go out there and have all these great speaking engagements. And the truth is that getting the speaking engagement is in and of itself a process. And we do try to give people support. But I mean, one of the biggest support tips that I can give from personal experience and from our research is to use your own local community. Sheila having been a nurse and knowing her own community and getting those, and definitely, like Sheila said, that it always grows once people like hearing your message, and that you won't know. Weren't you telling me, Sheila, recently that some people had come back to you, like maybe you had told them or you told even a relative of theirs like 6 months ago or something, and now they thought of something, a way that you could present?
Yeah, I can't remember specifically what that was, but that wouldn't surprise me. I've had a few contacts on Facebook. People I haven't talked to for years contact me and say, oh, could you do a presentation with our group? I know your history and I've seen you, a few things on Facebook that you've written. So it's very organic. A lot of it just comes through people I've known or people who know people who know people. Oh, I know who it was. It was actually I went to a anesthesia workshop as a patient voice last year in Toronto. And the girl that agreed to fly with me, we didn't know each other, but we were hooked up with by the organizers and we really hit it off. And then she contacted me because her daughter went to King's College and over by Dalhousie. And she said, oh, my daughter is looking for somebody to do speaking with some university students. And that's what you're thinking of, Julie. I just remember. Yes. Yeah. Oh, it's very roundabout, but
yeah. Oh, we have another question for you. I know it's getting late there.
Okay. Yeah.
This is from someone who's about to graduate from nursing school. How do you cope as a nurse with cataplexy attacks and the excessive exhaustion when working?
Yeah. Okay. So I think in a lot of ways, nursing was maybe the perfect job. It's really busy and it kept me awake. But once my narcolepsy started getting to the point that I was having more and more spells, it certainly interfered with my job. Had I known about narcolepsy at the beginning, I think I could have planned a little better. Having said that, I think that there's a lot of areas in nursing that it might be difficult, and you're going to have to navigate the best way to kind of, to deal with that in terms of, do they know, or, should they know or not know, because everybody is a little bit different. I ended up working in clinics from the age of 32, and I worked in orthopedics and neurology, neurosurgery. Every doctor I worked with knew about my narcolepsy, and every single one of them and my nursing colleagues were very supportive. I think a clinic job is ideal. I don't know where you are, whoever asked the question, but if you can get a day job, it's certainly helpful.
We have a question about antidepressants and cataplexy. So I'm not sure if that's for us specifically, but basically that antidepressants are a treatment that is used for cataplexy because they suppress REM sleep. So that would be something to talk to your doctor about and see if that would be a good treatment for you. So I think we'll just stick with that for now. And I know we were already about to say goodbye, and then we got to rush a good question. So thank you guys again for tuning in. And on a Sunday night, I want to just end by letting you know that save the date for the first Sunday of February 2nd, will be our next session like this, and we will announce later who will be presenting, but you'll definitely want to tune in for that. And with that, again, we just want to say, I want to say thank you, Sheila, for sharing your story and all that you do. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. And we'll see you next month.
Good night, everybody.
All right. Bye.
Bye.